start your video, so you should get a little message from me. Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the live stream is going. If you would like to call the meeting to order.
Okay. Good evening, SLT and members of council. I see, or I believe we have quorum, so I will call to order this meeting, the special council meeting on September 28th at 6 p.m. The strategic plan. So after that, I would like to have the approval of agenda. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a note for members of council. What you're going to see on your computers at home is the spreadsheet. You will not be seeing the tiles that would have your faces. I have a computer beside me so that I can see your faces in order to call the vote. And the mayor is also able to see that and will be able to see from here when you raise your hands with a question. But your home screens are going to look like the spreadsheet that's being displayed on the screen right now. So the first motion for members of council is the approval of the agenda. And I have a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the agenda for the September 28th special meeting of council be adopted as circulated. Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to call for any changes to the agenda.
Okay.
It is a special meeting, reminding though.
Yes, so on the special meeting of council, is there any special changes that any council member would like to make to the agenda? And Madam Clerk?
Seeing none, but it looks like on my screen, Councillor Wink is not at his table.
I'm here.
Oh, thank you. Oh, you've just taken your video off, perhaps?
No.
Okay,
Is that better?
No, there we go. That's much better. I think I was seeing your ceiling, perhaps. Okay, so for the vote for the agenda, Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion carries. Mr. Mayor, the next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest.
Yes, and after looking at the agenda, is there any council member that has a pecuniary interest or a pecuniary interest and general nature thereof to declare? Not seeing any.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda, Mr. Mayor, is the 2020 Strategic Plan Prioritization Update. Did you have remarks you wish to make first?
Yes, before I turn this over to the CAO, I just have a few words I'd like to say. This coming month will mark 2 years since this council has taken office, which in turn will be the halfway point of this council's mandate. We, of course, were all new in our positions, and as we had to learn our jobs, staff had to learn to adapt to this council's way of making decisions. Fair to say that it was a huge learning curve for all involved. I believe this council can be proud of its accomplishments of the last 2 years, and I believe also that we were a council of committees, and I think that was a feather in our cap, because I know when I was campaigning, and I heard from other members of this council also, that while I was campaigning, the citizens would say to me, if you need a hand, if you need some advice, I'm here for you. I want to help out. And when we formed these committees, and it's nice to point out that staff welcomed these committees. It was great to see the citizens of this town make these committees as successful as they turned out to be. I'll name a few of them: the Sustainability Committee, the User Committee, the Audit Committee, and probably the one that did the most work for this town was the Cannabis Control Committee. All these committees were successful because of the residents that stepped up to help out. At the same time, the council and staff worked together to make a lot of headway, or maybe that isn't the right phrase, but we certainly have accomplished a lot in the last 2 years. We've restructured the MCC, the huge steps we've made in the finance department with Teresa's guidance, and of course the CCC doing their yeoman's duty in making the bylaws that will be soon tested. So as we go through the next 2 years and what we want to see accomplished, like I say, it's great to see what we have done in the last 2 years. We've got every reason to be proud of these accomplishments, and I'm looking forward to what staff and council can accomplish in the next 2 years. After saying that, I will now turn the meeting over to our esteemed CAO, Mr. Cribbs.
Good evening, Council. It's a pleasure to be here. 8.5 months ago, we met for this purpose for your first strategic plan meeting update. And that evening, I thought, produced a lot of good work. And in turn, it produced really clear guidance for staff so as to allow us to prioritize our time and hopefully accomplish a number of things that were important to you and through you to the community. Of course, no one in that night early in the new year anticipated a coronavirus that was going to fundamentally alter how we did business. And I'm not sure that any of us thought we'd be quite as productive as we managed to be over the last 7 or 8 months, coronavirus or no. So we find ourselves this evening at a really interesting point and a chance for you to make substantial changes, minor changes, or anything in between, but to update the list. Our concept this evening was that fundamentally we'd follow the same process as we did about 8 months ago. That we might start with you possibly agreeing to remove the, if you see on the left-hand column, the completed initiatives. Completed initiatives, of course, doesn't mean that the problem's gone. We start there with invasive species bylaw, policy and plan, and that's, of course, gypsy moth, and we have every reason to think gypsy moths are coming back next year. However, the real focus here is that councils, we've sort of accomplished the guidance and the leadership piece. We now have a policy and a plan in place. We now have funding in place, and we now sort of have to let that work. And so, based on that, we submit that it's appropriate to remove that from key area of focus and replace with other pressing concerns. So that's essentially true for all of those items, at least from the staff perspective and the completed initiatives. We hope that meets, that you're agreeable or amenable to that. And we're hoping for a move in a second and to remove those items from the larger list we have and that we'll be returning to. There are 3 items that staff are suggesting it may be beneficial to remove them, at least for now. Those are the recommended for removal in the second column there, column E. Grants, proactive communication protocol, and introduction of mass notification system. The grants are something that simply we do fundamentally already, so that in the same way that you don't need to tell us to plow the roads when it snows, or to collect taxes. We simply constantly scour for grants. So I'm not sure that item specifically helps in the matrix, in that we'll already be doing it. And similarly, the mass notification system, Niagara Region's working on one. They'll be coming to us with the details shortly. Both the chief and I have been involved in a number of meetings discussing that. We understand it's coming, so that would simply be duplication of effort and candidly an expenditure just that on our population we couldn't do efficiently. It really needs to be spread amongst as many people as possible, and it is an appropriate regional initiative. So the recommended for removal items may or may not meet with your approval, but those are our suggestions. And if we can address those things, then we can go forward into the larger table. You can look at items that are there. Maybe you still want them there, but maybe either coronavirus, changed finances, or the passage of time has suggested to you that something should be a higher priority than it currently is, or a lower priority than it currently is, as the case may be, or maybe you think it's still just right. But you'll have a chance to review all the things currently in the matrix, and then of course the list of items that you yourselves have suggested, and items suggested by your staff, and any others. There's no rules, no prohibitions on you bringing forward further content this evening. We're going to try to run this like we did that 8 months ago, so a mover and a seconder, so that no one person can simply get something on into the matrix without at least one other person agreeing, and then voting on accepting it, yay, nay, and then voting on its rough ranking. And then we'll do a massive motion at the end of the evening. But all of that starts off with, before we can add things in or adjust what remains, we need your sign off to remove the completed initiatives. And so that's where I hope your discussion begins. Certainly I or any other staff member are available to answer your questions, but we feel that we've accomplished those things, or at least they've turned into now routine, what might be new, but routine work for staff, and will continue to be treated as such. My comments. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart and Councillor Hildebrand.
Well, you might as well call him, Nancy.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The short-term rental policy that is in place, and I think it's a really good workable policy, but I've got some concerns about compliance. I would like to get that updated. It doesn't really need to stay on here, but I would like to add an update to it so that we have increased penalties. Like if you have it rented for, one night, I think it's $250, but if it's 2 nights, the second night should be more. And if you continually rent it out, there should be increased fines as it goes to ensure compliance, because as it is, I don't think there's any guarantee that people will comply.
Okay, so 2 ways we might address that. One, I mean, that strikes me as a classic sort of notice of motion item back in sort of our regular stream of council business. But if, Councillor Stewart, if you feel that you want us to keep sort of strategic focus on that, then you could motion to sort of return that. We could rephrase or repackage, and that could turn into a examine efficacy of short-term rental system by May or June, July of 2021, with report back on same. So that would turn it. So what if you read through the strategic plan you've approved? We're actually creating the strategic priorities here that fall under the 6 areas. So these are actually all action items, things you want staff to be working on. So that would be something we could work towards, conducting a review, an analysis, bringing that back to you as a report. So that would be the strategic instruction to us. Or if you have a very specific goal in mind, that would be very fruitful as a notice of motion. But probably the development of a short-term rental policy that took the better part of a year to get done, I think has been checkmark accomplished. So we probably don't want that to still be in the list.
Yeah, thank
Councillor-
you. I'll put that forward as a notice of motion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you had Councillor Hildebrand next, and
Okay.
then Councillor Hahn.
Okay, Councillor Hildebrand?
I was prepared to make a motion to remove those items in the completed initiatives.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? And I see Councillor Wink is seconding the motion.
Yes, that's correct. I'll second it.
Thank
So
you.
the motion is on the floor. I did have a motion to prepare to do just that, but I know that Councillor Hahn also had her hand up.
Councillor Hahn, you wish to speak to this?
Yeah, well, we kind of jumped around a couple topics, so I'll go one back. And we have on that Exhibit 2 chart that you did, David, the bylaw enforcement policy. So I'm not sure if what Councillor Stewart just suggested, that might be an area to pop into that, because, I mean, that's kind of an all-encompassing policy in that we have to beef up a number of areas of enforcement, cannabis being one of them, short-term being one, so on and so forth. So I'm just making a suggestion that perhaps that is in the 6 to 10 category right now. Maybe that's suitable.
It absolutely could be. That could certainly fall in there. We were thematically thinking kind of as opposed to exact specifics in given bylaws, really a discussion about, the general enforcement philosophy, i.e. if you see an infraction, you simply lay a charge, like New York City used to do with jaywalking and gum chewing, or, the degree of leniency, what we think appropriately reflects the community's philosophy in these major areas. So it wasn't immediately designed to address specific subsections of bylaws. It was designed, or the original concept was to have a fruitful discussion so that we all walk away understanding where each other stands, and we can use that as guidance for pragmatic bylaw enforcement.
Madam Clerk.
So if there is no further discussion, I don't see any. There is a motion by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that Council approve that the completed initiatives and the staff recommended initiatives be removed from the Town of Pelham Strategic Plan priorities previously approved by Council. Councillor Hildebrand has his hand up.
And Councillor Hildebrand.
The motion I was prepared to approve was the completed initiatives being moved, not the recommended removal.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we can divide that motion to only consider the completed initiatives at this time.
Thank you.
So not seeing any further discussion on that, I will call the vote to remove the completed initiatives column. And I will start this with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes?
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes,
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Carried. So, Mr. Mayor, you now have the recommended removal column, if there are questions in that regard.
Okay. So we'll take comments or questions. Councillor Hildebrand, was that your hand I saw up?
Yes. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to divide those recommendations as well.
Okay, so each one on its own merit?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Oh.
Just to divide, we don't need a second, it's just a
Okay,
request.
okay, thank you. Any comments on that?
So if the council then will be voting separately on removing grants, proactive communication protocols, and introduce mass notification system. So the first discussion, being the first column, would be grants.
Okay. Any comments or questions on removing the grants from this column? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Okay, so I will call the vote on this, yea and nay. Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes?
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That's carried. So the next item for a vote would be proactive communication protocol.
Okay. Any comments, questions on proactive communication protocol?
You have Councillor Hahn.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Hahn.
Yes, when I brought this forward as an item, I think last time we talked about this at the MCC. The thinking was as we all know, we often get broad emails that are sent to everybody on council, sometimes include SLT as well. But regardless, there's a handful of citizens that will be very passionate about a number of issues and will just hit forward to everybody. So we all receive these emails, and when we don't know who's going to follow up, if one of us has followed up, when we're going to follow up, or how we're going to follow up. So the thinking behind this was exactly that, having some sort of protocol. There's got to be a best practice. I mean, I'm a new councillor, like many of us on council. I don't know what other municipal councils do when they all get blasted at the same time. There has to be a protocol or a best practice. But I think it's important, A, to respond to the individual, B, in a timely fashion, and C, knowing that it's been done. And that's one thing that I guess hasn't been done. So you can remove it, certainly, but I don't know that we have solved the latest efforts to help alleviate this problem. And for me, it is an issue because I don't know, like, do I respond? Who responds? So perhaps the PA can speak to this.
So before the CIO responds, I guess I always, if I get an email, as you refer to that as being blasted out to everyone, if I feel that I should, perhaps for that particular email, that perhaps I have some inside information for that resident, if I do reply to that resident, I always reply to all so that everyone can see. So so that would be one way, is that if it comes to everyone, I always send it out to everyone. That's just how I always, if indeed I respond. If I don't respond, well then I don't. Then I'll wait to see if anybody else does. We just had one today. As a matter of fact, a lady over on Far Avenue, and sure enough, Ryan, I believe, responded to her. So none of us had to. I'll turn it over to the CAO.
I think it's been about 5 months, 4 to 6, since my office has received what I would describe as a complaint or a note of dissatisfaction from any of you with respect to specifically how we've been handling complaints from the public. The mayor's introductory remarks, I think, were generally correct. The newspaper, the community focuses on, we have a rookie council. Well, I know that was true, but it's new for the staff as well, because, fundamental changeover, and this relationship, it's a two parties have to meet. And so we've been coming to understand your preferences and how you do business better. And I think it's taken us a while, but I think we've been doing a much better job at the risk of seeming like we're seeking compliments here. I can tell you over the summer, there were a lot of complaints came through councillors, Wink and Core, both from residents. And we've certainly got our response time down dramatically. And it's unfortunate Councillor Core isn't here this evening because I think he could comment on that, but Councillor Wink can. That our turnaround and our sort of positive affirmation, the thing that Councillor Hahn quite reasonably asks for, I'd like to know if someone got back to the resident. I don't know what the status is. I think we've made considerable headway, and I think that's fundamentally a cultural shift or us adjusting to your preferred style of doing business. At any rate, I don't think it's a serious, I don't think the suggestion is seriously that we invest in new technology to have a communication paradigm with 7 persons. It can't be that a $23 million corporation is going to prioritize communicating with 7 directors as one of the top 10 items it has to address. But it is a fair and reasonable expectation that we get back to you and we sort of let you know that something's been dealt with or not being dealt with or what the answer was. And we were certainly, my office's goal was to accomplish that through a soft cultural change and by working with you and learning how best to do that. And I feel we may have been successful for the past half year or so. It's been difficult under COVID, but we've actually been able to address, I mean, resident complaints, I feel, have gone up significantly. I think that's because a lot more people are home during the day for longer periods of time. And I think we've made real headway there. Nevertheless, this list is yours, Council, and if you want that item to remain on there, so it shall, and or if you want to offer just a little more specificity as the outcome, so be it. But from my perspective, there's been great progress to the point where it's sort of a more effective communication from senior staff to you, and I think we've been scratching the itch, and certainly I feel like that's been happening in the rural areas, the urban component of the town, from which most complaints are generated simply by virtue of population.
Any further comments, Councillor Hahn?
Well, if you feel that we're done, tick the box, then honestly, there's no point in leaving it on, because then the general feel from your office and senior staff is that, well, what work are we going to continue? We're done that, right? So if we're not actively going to work on something, there's no point in leaving it on. My ask last time, and again, I'll ask it again, and that is, what do other municipalities do? There has to be best practices, and I would have hoped, I guess, or hope going forward, we can look into what those best practices are. If we don't plan on doing that, then you might as well take it right off the list.
Anything that remains on the list, we will work towards doing. We won't ignore anything on it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors want to weigh in on the proactive communication protocol? Any comments, questions? If not, I will call the vote. Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Okay, so members of council, this will be to remove the proactive communications protocol. And this vote starts with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
No.
Councillor Hildebrand?
No.
Councillor Olson?
No.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Motion is tied, so therefore defeated. So this item will stay on the list. And the third item is introduce mass notification system. Are there any questions with mass notification system?
Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, this vote starts with Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that carries unanimously. And I also do have a motion to receive the Chief Administrator's Officer's 2020 Strategic Plan Prioritization Update for information, and that's moved by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hahn. And this vote would start with Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that is carried. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the alignment of the 2021 strategic priorities. Historically, there has been a motion to suspend the rules to allow input and debate by members of the staff, if that without voting, of course. So I do have a motion to by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that the rules of procedure as contained in the Town of Pelham procedural bylaw be suspended as they pertain to rules of debate, and that the Town of Pelham staff be permitted to participate in discussion, and that the permission be recognized for input and debate portion only, not be deemed to include making motions or on voting privileges. If there are any questions by members of council? Okay, so I will call the vote, and I will start this one with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That's carried. So, Mr. Mayor, if you wish to turn the meeting over to the CAO for the alignment of 2021 strategic priorities, and the spreadsheet should be in the view of all members of council.
Okay, Mr. CAO, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Council. So, if I may, we think that the best way forward is to begin, if you look at the columns on your right, 1 to 5, 6 through 10, those were the rough priorities, or the rough ranking priorities for the individual items. And these are the items that have survived the purge, if you will, that remain undone or only partially completed. I think it might behoove us if we started with the items inside there and you looked at each one and had some discussion amongst yourselves and or with some staff input as to whether you're happy with, say, new zoning bylaw remaining in the top 5, or you feel that's more of a 6 to 10 or 11 to 15 or so, as you will. Because if we can sort of massage those, but have a bit of a structure to it, then we could move over to council recommended initiatives, and from there to staff recommended initiatives if you so choose. Of course, you need not listen to those whatsoever. But if we maybe start with the existing ones and see if you still feel that they're relatively prioritized as you'd wish them to be, that would be a fruitful exercise. Madam Clerk can see your faces and can understand who's got their hands up and wishes to speak first. Just so as to get you started, it would certainly be my submission to you that the new zoning bylaw is fundamental. Look, it's from 87, and the last council, to its credit, did put some time and resources into addressing the issue, but it did not get it done in its 4-year mandate. And I'm unaware of any other council since '87 even attempting to do this. It is now enormously overdue. It has caused a considerable amount of friction in a number of your votes and debates. It goes to the core of how we want to develop and what can be done with land in the town. It cuts across a whole bunch of our major issues, and from my perspective, that should remain a top 5. And if it did remain a top 5, it's a very large undertaking. But if that stays a top 5, then that will realistically get done. It isn't impossible that it could be done before the end of next year, but it would get done this term of council, and maybe before the end of next year. It depends on what we can do with public meetings and COVID, because we need to have a number of them under the Planning Act. Nevertheless, for I'd submit to you that ought to stay where it is, and but it's really your meeting, not staff. So I'll stop talking.
Any comments on the comments of the Mr. CAO? And I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in agreement with the new zoning bylaw. However, there's one concern I really have, and that's a comprehensive strategy for planning and development Pelham. When I'm looking at the last plan that we did, it was supposed to be updated every 5 years. And obviously, there's a vision difference between what's seemingly being proposed and what we're seeing today. And it has something to do with demographics, and it has to do with a lot of other things. The report, the plan, our last plan was very specific because it talks about developing and monitoring a program for the greenfield and intensification areas. The monitor program shall be established to review historical production levels, location and spatial distribution of supply of vacant land, designated residential areas. It continues on and on and on. And it comes up and it says we should be monitoring growth. We should be receiving a report for that. We should be receiving a report on intensification. And obviously it revisits the official plan every year. In my view, we haven't accomplished that. I don't know that I've just missed it as a new councillor, but I haven't seen the monitoring of the growth report or the intensification plan. So to me, the zoning bylaw is all part of this comprehensive development strategy, but I'm not a planner, so I can't really tell you. But that, when you read my item, that's one of the things I put on there. And obviously the vision has to be clear. And right now, I don't think the vision we have is clear because we're seeing differences continuously when we're coming down to the vote. So that's why I guess the CAO has to comment on that, because I'm not sure how the comprehensive zoning bylaw and the comprehensive strategic plan for development of Pelham should be the same type, they're intertwined as I see it.
Any comments on that, CAO?
Everything Councillor Hildebrand says, I'm in complete agreement with, save and accept. The region has asked us to hold off on any revisions to our official plan while they're working on theirs. They're well into that process. I can inform council that I have had close involvement with 2 official plans over the course of my career. When I started in Lambton County, it started the month I began. I was there 5 years and 2 months, and it wrapped up the month before I left. So it took 5 years and 1 month to come up with a new official plan in Lambton. When I came to Norfolk, it was already underway, and it got done 5 years to the month it was started. So I have 2, and London did a couple, but I wasn't involved in that work when I was employed there. The 2 have been closely involved with, they've both taken 5 full years. The official plan, it's true, official plan and zoning go hand in hand, but the zoning bylaw, you have lived through a number of challenges in less than 2 years associated with that document specifically. Again, from 1987, again, in need of a fundamental overhaul. And that is a discrete item that we can actually accomplish that no previous council since 87 has accomplished, although one put a lot of effort in and made some headway. So that is an accomplishable goal. The official plan, there's a very good reason why we haven't even started yet. But when we do, I think if we started tomorrow, it wouldn't get done this term of council. So it is not a situation where we want to hold on and wait, make sure we have the official plan before we deal with the zoning bylaw. There have been so many changes in planning law, so many fundamental shifts of thought that the zoning bylaw, we really need to, we need to address both, but one we can go proceed with. And I think, council, you will find yourself most satisfied through the zoning bylaw. We can address a number of issues which I infer you believe to be problematic to the community.
Thank you. Any other comments?
You have Councillor.
Wink. Oh,
You have Councillor Hildebrand and Councillor Hahn.
okay. Councillor Hildebrand, I'll go back to you to finish up your thoughts, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. See, the data that I'm missing in terms of making decisions when it comes down to planning decisions, like the meetings we're having on different properties, is I don't have a report in terms of monitoring growth, which I'm supposed to be getting yearly, nor the intensification plan. And those, according to the official plan, I'm supposed to be getting yearly. And as far as I'm concerned, as councilors, I need data to make proper decisions. And I don't know that I'm getting that data.
Could we perhaps turn the floor over to Ms. Weems? But regardless of her answer, the question is, where does zoning bylaw go? Not these other items right now. It's where do you want to still rank zoning bylaw in the top 30, and if so, where? That's our focus at this exact moment. But maybe Ms. Weems can assist.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Certainly, Councillor Hillebrand is correct. There are reports that, speak to the monitoring of growth and intensification. And quite frankly, to be blunt, we just haven't had the resources to do that. We've been busy with everything else. And so it just doesn't get done. But certainly that's something we can endeavor to undertake and provide that information to council.
Thank you, Ms. Weems.
You have Councillor Hahn.
Yep, Councillor Hahn.
So I would agree that the zoning bylaw is a priority that should remain in the 1 to 5 category. But with regards to what the CAO mentioned earlier, and that is that the region asked us to hold off on doing an official plan. Hold off until when? Because by your examples, it would seem that it's a 2-term activity, regardless of how you cut it. So at some point in time, it has to get started. So at what point are we able to start that? Because as far as a vision, I think we need a vision for all of Pelham. Pelham is seemingly rather disjointed in the vision. We have a vision that was done for East Fawn Hill Shore. That's the newest part, and I understand that, and that's underway. But when we talk about Fenwick, when we talk about North Pelham, when we talk about all the other areas, Ridgeville and such, we don't have a look and feel. Like if we think in our mind's eye what Niagara-on-the-Lake looks like. I mean, even though there's brand new buildings, they have a historic look and feel. They might be a brand new plaza, but it all don't have that. We're very disjointed, and I think that we would need to address that through an official plan. So at what point can we start this?
Mr. CEO, I believe from what I remember at the region is do they not expect to have that official plan passed? Is that in 2022? Am I correct in that?
Mr. Mayor, through you, if I may.
Okay, yes.
The region has been underway with this process for about 2 years. They will be coming to council this fall and making a presentation, and they also want to have a workshop with local municipalities in terms of exactly what Councillor Hahn and Councillor Hildebrand are talking about in terms of a vision. But I think they're anticipating to have their official plan done and completed by the end of 2021, and which would then mean that we can start our work with respect to ours. Council needs to understand that, though, that
our official plan needs to conform with the region's official plan. The region's official plan needs to conform with provincial plans and policies. So there is this kind of top down and trickle up approach to planning in the province of Ontario. And so there are lots of things that have been done, legislation that is passed, provincial policies that are come down, provincial plans that have been approved since our plan was adopted by council and approved. And so there are a number of areas that we would be looking at to modify or change our official plan, just as the region is looking at a number of areas that they'll be looking at to amend their official plan and provide direction to the local municipalities. The biggest piece will be the allocation of growth. And certainly we know in this province that we are going to grow. We know in this region that we are going to grow. And the question will be, how much of that growth will Pelham receive?
Great. Thank you for that information, Ms. Weens. Again, as the CAO stated, we're talking about the new zoning bylaw. I think the two council that have spoke so far realize that it has to be in 1 to 5. Any other comments from any councillors? And I see Councillor Wink.
So I agree that the new zoning bylaw should be in 1 to 5. And one of my initiatives, I said revise zoning bylaws. It hasn't been done since the 80s. So I echo the CAO's comments with respect to the zoning.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. This is just a very small piece that fits under zoning, and it's more of a comment than anything. But in Burlington, for example, with the property on Hayes that they wanted to divide and put into 3 townhouses and the accessory units, what they require now in Burlington is a pre-application meeting between the builder, developer, and the community. So that's before they spend money. They have a meeting with the surrounding community, and they take the input they get from the neighbors. And then when they make their application, they have to explain how they've incorporated, the needs and what the community has put forward. Burlington was doing this on a voluntary basis, but it's now mandated. So perhaps the CAO or our mayor could reach out to Burlington for the details on this, because I think it would be very beneficial to our future planning.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments? Not seeing any. I will call the vote.
So we'll put this as a motion by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. And this is to keep the new zoning bylaw in 1 to 5. So I will call the vote, starting with Councillor Olsen.
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
Carried. And through you, Mr. Mayor, the next column is 6 to 10. The first item is future of library.
And who would like to start off on this subject? And I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The concern I have about the library, that's the only organization we almost give $1 million to and have no control over the budget. So this to me is a real high priority. I'm not sure whether it'll go to number 1, but it definitely has to be in the 6 to 10 month range.
Thank you, Councillor. I can honestly say that if it hadn't been for COVID, I think you would have seen some big steps made in the last 6 months. We were getting some good dialogue going between council and the library board. It was unfortunate, of course, that it's ground to a halt. And of course, with the numbers starting to escalate again, yeah, hard to say when that is going to pick up again. But I agree with you also that that it has to be. I don't call it a problem to be resolved, but the future certainly has to be made clear to council and to the library as to what direction this council wants to take. So I appreciate those comments. Any other comments on? I see Councillor Wink.
Yeah, so our backs are against the wall with respect to the library because in 2025 it has to be fully accessible for all people. So we have to do major renovations to that property for accessibility, not only for users but also for staff.
Yes, that's a good point to bring out also, Councillor. It was very unfortunate that we missed out on the grant we were all hoping for, a new building. Now we have to deal with the reality of, like you say, accessibility is definitely coming to that building, for sure. Any other comments? Not seen any. I'll have the clerk call the vote.
So I have a mover, Councillor Hildebrand. Do I have a seconder to keep it in the 6 to 10? Councillor Wink?
So why would we, if we realize that it's such a priority, why wouldn't we move it 1 to 5?
Madam Clerk, I honestly think that there's a feeling on this council to indeed move it up to the next slot. What would the steps have to be?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, through the motion could be to move the future of the library over to the 1 to 5 category.
Any discussion on that motion?
I would need a motion.
Oh, first we need the motion. Okay, a motion by Councillor Wink. Need a seconder. Councillor Hildebrand. Thank you. Any discussion on this motion? Yep, Councillor Hahn.
So that I'm clear, so we've got what, 1, 2, 3, 5 boxes. So in number 1 box, how does that compare to number 5 box? So is that in sequence? In other words, you know, so are we popping in this to the 2nd, which means it's the 2nd thing done? Are we popping it into the 5th? It's the 5th thing done? How does this work?
Maybe Mr. CAO, maybe you want to comment on that?
At the previous session, council was kind enough, and I would hope you would consider this position again, to defer the specificity of the ranking. So we don't distinguish between number 1 or 5. They're just top 5 priorities, which allowed us, look, we got a lot done. And part of the reason that was so is that we had the freedom to sort of move things up or down to react. The library is an excellent example. We do not have unilateral control over that item. It involves working with third parties who have some amount of autonomy. So you may well choose to make it a top 5 priority, but we have to at least recognize that neither council nor town administration can simply wave a wand and make it so. And so that earlier item or that list, we just move things up and down a little bit depending on what happened in the economy or what a third party did, or just reacting to outside events, not all of which we control, of course. We have to react to our environment. So there is, at least we as staff, didn't, number one wasn't actually more important than number three. They were all top fives, for instance. And I think that's really useful. It allows us some flexibility as a management team to react to what's going on at time. And plus, some of these items involve some members of your senior leadership team and not others. Not everything requires a full court press from the entire team. So what might be the number 5 priority could be the number 1 priority for a given director and myself, but the number 3 for someone else. So that's why we don't have specific first, second, third places. We simply have columns. So we weren't taking that into account. We can if you wish, but we felt we had excellent flexibility, and I think it played out in the results. So I'd submit that it would, ideally from our perspective, you don't change that.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to understand the rules of the game before we get going.
Yep, thank you, Councillor, and thank you for that clarification, Mr. CAO. Any other comments before the clerk calls the vote? Madam Clerk?
So the motion is to move the future of the library into the 1 to 5 category, and I will start with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
Carried. The next item for consideration is renew and enhance the public service request system.
If I may?
Yes.
I think that this item would marry really well with the item that, sorry, Madam Clerk, if you can scroll down, the proactive communication protocol, I think were the words. Yeah, so item 11 over in column C. That was one of the 3 staff had recommended cutting. So it's the will of council that remains there. I think if there's going to be a communication protocol, it makes some sense that it somehow be linked to the town's existing PSR system. I don't know which, if any of the elected officials have been through the PSR system. It's actually, it kind of works. Go to the website, get pop-down menus from, you know, park, a problem with a park, with a sidewalk, with a tree, any number of things, and it generates a work order that goes to the appropriate area. So we do have, it isn't extremely slick, it isn't extremely advanced, but it is rudimentary and it does generate work orders. Nevertheless, it doesn't create a system whereby we ultimately manage to communicate to you that something's been done. So those two, there's probably a natural sort of synergy between those. And so council might consider marrying those together. I would thereafter be so bold as to suggest to you that the PSR system works. So in my mind, that's certainly not a top 10 fix when you have something that is working. But that might be a 16 to 20 or somewhere between 11 and 25, whatever your thoughts might be. But those two together could be an effective item.
Comments on what the CAO has just said, and I see Councillor Hahn.
So I think we're going to have a difference of opinion on that front, David, because in my own use of the PSR system, I used it a few times. It was not only not user friendly and clunky, certainly, but it certainly did not allow me answers. It didn't allow me to know timing. It was actually not good in the way of customer service at all. And that's my own experience. And so then I look at some constituents that have also sent me their PSR entries, some of them from last year, and they haven't been addressed. And sometimes what it is, it's that they get closed out, or they get, we'll close it out and we'll look at it at a later date, but there's no tracking. And so most recently, there was even an email that came by not that long ago from the creator, I guess, of the program, suggesting that often things are being closed out prematurely with the idea that, yes, right now we can't deal with it. We can deal with it in 6 months, or when there's no snow, or when there is snow, whatever the case may be. But because it's not tracked, and then it's closed out, it doesn't get revisited. So it's kind of the way that it's being used is not completely effective. And it's a customer dissatisfier or a resident dissatisfier in my experience so far. And I think either it needs to be used properly, which is what the creator has suggested isn't necessarily being done at all times, or we need to look at what best practices are, because there's 11 other municipalities that are, I'm going to guess, using some sort of system. What are they using, and can we look at that perhaps?
Thank you, Councillor Hahn. Councillor Hildebrand.
Yeah, I also have my residents complaining to me. Just this last weekend, I had a resident and they were showing me that they couldn't even populate the PSR system. So I contacted our data department today and said, look, this thing has to be fixed. Residents have to be able to finish this. They shouldn't have to come to me and complain to me, and I have to do something about it. I've had this complaint over and over again. So right now, the data department is going after the developer and see if he can see what happened on the weekend with this system.
So Bob, did you put a complaint into the PSR system?
I verbally talked to the individual. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I can make a comment?
Well, let the CAO and then we'll go back to you. Mr. CAO?
No, I feel like at this point, I would simply be argumentative.
Okay.
Happy to take direction from council.
Okay, then Councillor Wink.
So can I make a suggestion, because we're trying to plug a bunch of initiatives and we haven't agreed to all the initiatives. So we could be filling up column 1 to 5 in a hurry with the past initiatives, but we may decide that some of the recommendations from staff and council should end up going in 1 to 5, and that line may be full. So shouldn't we just look at all the initiatives that we want to recommend and then look at where we're putting them?
Madam Clerk?
I would defer to the facilitator, CAO.
Mr. CAO?
That, council, it's your meeting. That if that will work too.
Okay. Then, if we're going to follow that protocol, should we move then to, what would you want to do first? The staff recommended or the?
I think you should allow, I think Madam Clerk should call on whoever's got their hands up with making efforts not to call on the same person twice, so that people get a more or less an even chance to nominate any item from council recommended initiatives, staff recommended initiatives, or the existing ones, and where they'd like to plug and play.
Okay, we'll do that then, Madam Clerk.
So, members of council, hearing the CAO's suggestion, does anyone have a motion to move any of the recommended initiatives into one of the categories? Councillor Wink, I see first.
So options for urban tree canopy, we've had a lot of flack from residents throughout this past year with respect to the urban tree canopy. So I'd like to see that moved in somewhere, maybe 11 to 15.
No, so we don't need, we're not going to do seconders anymore then, Madam Clerk, we just.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we would need a seconder and to plug that in, because otherwise it's just a suggestion.
Okay, is there a councillor that will second Councillor Wink's? And I see Councillor Hildebrand. Thank you, Councillor.
Your Honor,
Yes.
Councillor Olson speaking. Through you, can you see me on the screen or anything there? I'm waving my hand.
Oh, we can't see your hand.
Oh, okay. Where am I supposed to put it?
Well, just put it in, wave it in front of your face.
There you go.
Oh, right there.
You can see the left hand.
Okay, sorry, Councillor. We will keep an eye out for your hand.
Through you, Your Honor, I'd like to ask a question about the PSR system, make a couple of comments.
Go ahead.
If that's okay.
Yep.
I look at this as a real measurement of customer service and citizen service. And good or bad, a system like this generates statistics. And I'd like to see the statistics come to council, such as just the outstanding items and maybe the items that were put on the system and how long they've been there. And just get some kind of an aging, because I think that's exactly what we need to deal with some of the issues that people have. And I would certainly put it into and join it together with the proactive communications protocol, and probably even with the risk management protocol. And I suggested a problem solving, a causal analysis. So maybe the four things could go together, but I really think we have something there that we can build on and perhaps enhance and make it into a useful thing for council to measure customer satisfaction.
And while you were plugged into you, Mr. Councilor Olson, where would you like to see, where do you feel that should, what column? 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15?
Well, I think it's probably one of the better, although it has its problems, and I admit that. I think they should be somewhere in the area of the first column, 1 to 5.
Okay, thank you. We'll take your comments. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes?
Mr. Maher, I do hear you on that one. I have a motion on the floor with regard to the options for the urban tree canopy. Mr. Maher, I won't lose track of you. If we could just have comments, and then we'll go back to the PSR. If we'll just have comments on the options for urban tree canopy, there has been a motion moved and seconded to move that to the 11 to 15 category. Is there any discussion on that so I can dispose of that item? And if not, we'll call the vote. Councillor Hahn.
I agree. That's a priority. Certainly, too, if we look at the development that's proposed for the Stella area, so behind Glen Green, or kind of beside behind Glen Green area, there's going to be a heck of a lot of trees in and around there, and then of course how that's going to merge and you know, obviously passage across the trail, Steve Bauer Trail, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things coming our way that are going to be tree related. So I would almost suggest the 6 to 10 category, because sooner than later, because that's that proposal's already, you know, coming on the table for too long.
Okay, Madam Clerk, could we indeed move it from 11 to 6 to 10?
If there's a seconder to move it from 11 to 15 to 6 to 10?
Is there a mover then to move it up to the 6 to 10? And I see Councillor Hildebrand. Any discussion on that? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Yep, sorry, it's just a lot to keep track of all these screens here. So that's going to be on a motion by Councillors Hahn and Hildebrand. And this vote starts with Councillor Wink. And this is in the 6 to 10 category.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
And that's carried. Members of council, you do have some discussion ongoing with regard to renewing and enhancing the PSR system. Through you, Mr. Mayor, with your indulgence, the Director of Public Works, Mr. Marr, would like to have some input.
Yes, yes, Director, go ahead.
Thank you. So through you, Mr. Mayor, this is something that we're currently taking a look at. Right now, we've got two different work order systems. One is generated through the PSR system, which is a public request system. The other is our internal work order system, which is called Comtrax, and that's also linked up through our asset management program. So we're finding it very difficult to manage the two separate systems internally. It seems that with the PSR system, to date this year, we've had 111, sorry, in the last month, we had 111 requests through the PSR system. A lot of the information doesn't get entered properly into the system. It's very difficult to try to respond back to residents when we don't have phone numbers and email addresses and contact information. A lot of the time, the responses that are generated through the PSR system by our operations staff, the residents will get notified of those responses. If they don't read those emails or open those up, the response is lost, and the perception is that it's not being addressed or it's being ignored. So I've just started to have meetings with our operations group on how we actually come up with a better system that would tie in with our work order system more efficiently. So I'm not saying that the PSR system's not the system to be used, but we want to explore some opportunities with respect to what's available to tie in with our current work order system, because that seems to be working well. The majority of the complaints and the issues that we get through Public Works is generated through emails and phone calls, and then we manually go through the Comtrax work order system to set up those work orders. So right now, that's, and to be quite honest with you, that's a frustration from our operations group, is that the requests that are coming through the PSR system are not accurate, complete, and the number of variables that the public has to choose from with respect to what the issues are there's pages and pages and pages that you can choose from, and also another concern from our staff is that unless there's a specific address that's entered, and if they're clicking off the map, sometimes we don't have the right address. There's a lot of things there that we need to work on and consider, and I think this is a great opportunity by council and staff to look at maybe not only the PSR system but our whole work order system and how those issues get addressed. And maybe it is the PSR system that's enhanced and working well. Maybe it's something else entirely different.
Thank you for your input on that. Obviously, when you're getting, I believe you said over 100 PSR requests in a month, on top of your contractual work, yeah, it's got to be, and then put on top of that misinformation, either by the resident, I take it. Yeah, I can see where the headaches would mount up. So maybe, obviously, again, it's time to have a look at how PW operates on using the two, and perhaps a hybrid, or at least take a look and see how they can be improved for sure. Thank you for that, Director.
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor, just based on the month of submissions on the PSR system, about 50% of that was related to bylaw. 50% of that was basically public works. So there's an equal split between bylaw and public works. Out of the PSRs that public works ended up receiving, approximately 30% of those were streetlight related, and 40% were related to trees.
Okay, excellent. So you obviously are keeping somewhat statistics on the incoming call. So that's great to see. Thank you. Any other comments on the PSR? Councillor Olson?
Olson and Councillor Hahn. And I can't tell if Councillor Wink is leaning on his arm or has a question. I think he has a question.
Councillor Olson?
Councillor Olson, Hahn, and
through
Wink.
you, Your Honor. Thank you for that explanation and those numbers and the categories. And I'm very pleased to hear that we're examining an enhancement of our system there. Basically, the system has to have you have to be able to put in your complaint with the fewest number of keystrokes to satisfy the citizens and the users. And I'm going to assume that we are retaining the proper records and managing our records so that we meet all of our obligations under municipal law as well. If I could have an answer to that question, perhaps.
Yeah, Director?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, can you repeat that last part of that question?
Yes, I just want to make sure.
We do have a corporate retention records policy and plan. We are in FIPA compliant, and we do that. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. So to the affirmative, Mr. Olson. Go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hahn, then Councillor Wink.
Yes, just two quick things, actually. Number one, yeah, thanks, Director Marr, for that. And one thing I think we can do, the fellow that I met with, that I can't remember his name, but it's the creator, he seemed very okay with suggestions to tweak the system if we needed something. So one thing you mentioned, Jason, was that if there isn't a telephone number or email, we can't get back in touch with the customer or the resident. That's probably a very easy fix, that if you don't submit an email or telephone number or both, you won't be able to hit the submit button. So that would prevent that then from going into the system without that information. So that's one fix that we can do in the interim, most likely. And number two, and this is also for the benefit of Councillor Olson, so we have the affiliation with the neighboring municipalities as far as like a buying group, so buying power. So if we are going to look at perhaps making some enhancements, some changes and whatnot to our system for work orders and PSRs, whether we use a new system or enhance the one we have, I would suggest, one, we reach out to our neighboring municipalities to find out what works for them. And number two, if we are going to make a purchase, for instance, down the road, that we use that buying power to perhaps do that.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Hahn. I believe Councillor Wink, you're next.
Yeah, so through the discussion with council is frustrated with the system. It seems like staff are frustrated with the system. I'd like to make a motion to keep that in there and add proactive communication protocol in with that, and make a motion to have it remain in the 6 to 10 category.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Hildebrand, thank you. Discussion on the motion? If not, we'll call the vote.
Okay, and this one starts with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That's carried.
So another councillor should be able to put a recommendation up.
Yes. And add. Just also trying to keep the record here. So, so if a member of council has another item that they wish to make a motion on, Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This is a motion to give Councillor Olson a job. This is board and committee assignments for councillors. That's the easy part. I don't even know whether it has to be on the strategic plan, but it's just one of those meetings we need to have. But the future part of it is to review the terms of reference and benefits and all the other things with regards to council and councillors' positions. Because really, when I became a councillor, I just basically accepted all the committees and boards and all the recommendations almost on the best information we have. Now that we've been in council for a couple of years, I've got a much clearer vision of what I think the terms of reference and some of the board and council committee assignments should be and what the benefits of council should be. So that's one that's right down at the end of the list. But the first part is board and committee assignments, reviewing what we all have and the committees we're all on. I don't think it needs to even be on the strategic plan. It just needs to be part of a meeting that we have.
Ms. Wilford, I believe the counselor is referring to line 16 on council recommended initiatives. Board committee assignments for counselors, terms of reference and benefits. Councillor Hildebrand, do you have a motion on where you wish that placed?
Well, the board and committee assignments, I think, should be, it's not a big thing. It's one meeting thing. I'm not even sure I want to put that 1 to 5, but the last part should be done before our term is over. So that to me would be at the end.
So I need a number to put it in one of the boxes.
Well, maybe the CEO could give me direction as to how we can get Councilor Olson some jobs, and then
committee assignments will come up as we're advertising for a number of committees. We can do that just in a meeting, apart from the strategic plan.
Okay.
So if you have a spot for the terms of reference review, and is it benefits for committee appointees? Is that what?
No, for councilors.
Oh, okay. So what column do you wish to make a motion on that?
When I'm looking at the boxes, that would be box 21 to 25.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Mayor, I will remove board and committee assignments, and then it will just be review terms of reference and counselor. So it's terms of reference for committees
and boards. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. And so I have that on a motion by Councillor Hildebrand to place this in 21 to 25. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stewart, any discussion on that, through Mr. Mayor?
I'm calling for discussion on that motion, and I don't see any.
I don't see any, so I will call the vote on that. And I'm sorry, I'm not necessarily going in the next alphabetical order because it's a bit hard to keep track of 3 screens here. So I'm going to start this with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that's carried. Okay, so looking for another motion from members of council. Councillor Wink, I see your hand up, and Councillor Hahn next.
So I'd like to make a motion under staff recommendation initiatives that talks about parking strategy. This is obviously near and dear to council also. I'd like to, I don't know why it's on there twice, but the parking initiatives, a master plan and MCC our parking strategy, I would like to make a motion to move that into 1 to 5 category.
Stole my thunder.
Sorry, Lisa.
So, Councillor Hahn, do I take that as a second? And members of council, do you have any discussion on the motion to move the parking initiatives and master plan MCC parking and parking strategy into 1 to 5?
Nope.
Seeing none, I will call the question, starting with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That carries. And I believe Councillor Hahn had her hand up next, but was that with regard to the parking or something else?
That was that one, but I'll find another one. Just give me some time.
Okay, does anyone else have something to bring forward at this time? So what we're looking for is a motion to move staff recommended initiatives or council recommended initiatives over into the five ranked categories. Councillor Hildebrand, I see your hand.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, one of the initiatives that I'd like to place on the agenda would be the energy efficiency and green energy. I think that's part of what the USC will be working on. So
Line 17. Okay, and into which category, Councillor?
probably into column I.
11 to 15?
Would be 11 to 15, correct.
And is there a seconder for that?
So,
Councillor Wink? Mr. Mayor, if you'd like
Yep.
to call for discussion, I do think the CAO might have something he wants to add.
Okay, first we'll hear from the CAO. If he has a comment, then we'll go to council. Mr. CAO?
Your staff are entirely supportive. We have that, or part of that, in under staff recommended initiatives. I should inform council that if you missed it, the throne speech the Prime Minister made on Friday last indicated that the government is going to, over the next, they don't nail down with specificity when exactly the grants are coming out, but they are making monies available for enhancements to building energy efficiency. And they are also going to be making monies available with respect to electric vehicles. So both of those things, we believe, I guess this is essentially me trying to suggest maybe even move that up to 6 to 10, but regardless of where you choose to fit it, if we're able to come up with our business cases on both those topics, on this new energy initiatives, particularly with respect to the MCC, but possibly also Town Hall, and possibly do an analysis on what it might take to move part or all of the fleet over to electric vehicles. If we have if they're shovel ready, is the language we like to use in the municipal world. If we can make them shovel ready, we believe money's coming for that. And we really didn't think there were going to be grants in those areas for the next little while, given the damage COVID has done to public finances, but apparently there will be. So these are doable items that I think would enhance. We don't have a lot under environment, which is one of the values in the strategic, further back in the strategic plan. So this would be an action item that is doable and supports an action area or a value where we don't have a lot at the moment.
Thank you for that, Mr. CAO. I'm wondering, as you say, shovel-ready projects seem to get priorities. So, and if it was in the throne speech that the money is going to be available, then perhaps council might want to think about taking that from 11 to 15 and putting it in the 6 to 10. What's the council's thinking on that? Or do you want to leave it at 11 to 15? Any comments?
So if we go back to the mover and seconder, Councillor Hildebrand, Councillor Wink. Councillor Hildebrand?
Yep.
Well, the part about green energy and electric vehicles is an easy adaptation. The more complex ones are the solar panels and the solar energy and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure how to split the time up. One is a quick thing, which could be 6 to 10, and the other one I think is far more complex, getting the engineering done. However, I'm not going to delay the CAO if he thinks the staff can have it done in 6 to 10 weeks or 6 to 10 months.
And Councillor Wink, your thoughts?
Yeah, I have no problem moving it into the 6 to 10 category. So just for clarification, there was nothing said that it would be done in 6 to 10 months. It's just that it's going to be in the 6 to 10 column.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Mr. CAO, did you have something to add?
No, just only that point. If you look like new zoning bylaw, if we got it done in 365 days, I would be exceptionally proud. And that's even with the head start from some of the work done by the last council. Future of library, again, is not going to be a 3 or 4 month thing. I mean, if we put all the 1 to 5 priorities as things that can't be done inside a year, what happens when it comes time to look at the progress you've made? We only choose really long time horizon things in the top priorities. We get none of them done this year. Or, sorry, 2021. It's good to have a mix of some things that are actually doable in a shorter time frame, if only for staff morale.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Any other comments before the clerk calls the vote? Not seeing any. Do you see any, Madam Clerk?
I don't. So through you, Mr. Mayor, the vote starts with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that is carried. And looking for another motion from the floor to move an item into the chart. Councillor Hahn.
So I'm just looking here on my own Excel page, which is the same as what you're using. So I'm just noting some duplication. So we can probably get rid of a few things here. So if you look on, let's see the numbers here. I'm just following your numbers. Okay, so 6C, which is Plan for Public Works Operations. And then D4, which is Explore Alternatives for Tice Road Operations. I'm thinking those are probably referring to the same thing. If not, please let me know. The other one is, I'm noticing 2 duplications. So we've got in 1 to 5, we've got new zoning bylaw, which is G4, but then we've also got in revised zoning bylaws has not been done since the 80s, which is in your D8. So I think we can knock off a couple there, can't we, as far as reducing it to at least 1 for each?
Agreed.
Okay. So I guess I would, the other one I wanted to put forward to as a motion would be the illumination bylaw, but I want a little bit more clarification on that. So are we talking about the illumination bylaw in the sense that this is the portion, it speaks to more than just cannabis, but in the cannabis control committee and the work they've done and people who have come forward in that regard, that is kind of the impetus for this. Are we talking about the same illumination bylaw, or is this something different, just so I understand? And if it is what I'm thinking, then I would put that forward in a category, in the first category.
Mr. CAO?
They are one and the same.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I would suggest that I would put that in the first category, only because of the timing. We need to tackle that sooner than later with regard the our cannabis situation and our bylaws as we move forward.
Okay.
And is that a second, Councillor Wink?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, if there's any discussion on moving the illumination bylaw into the 1 to 5 category.
Yes. Any comments, discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
So this vote starts with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
And that's carried. And just for the information of council, I did combine on my worksheet, which is different than Ms. Wilford's, the plan for public works operations and explore alternatives for Tice Road. I'm not sure that they are the same thing. Mr. CAO, do you wish to comment on that, or could they be the same?
Well, I think staff will prefer the plan for public works operations wording. They are meant to substantively tackle the same thing. The reality is our public works yard is located in more or less the extreme northwest of the municipality. It isn't fundamentally clear that it's a small cramped facility that can't take much more equipment than it currently holds. Some guidance on alternatives, parking stuff elsewhere, looking for a second location if that's going to improve deployment time. One of the things about winter maintenance in particular is that it's time sensitive. Those are the wording maybe in 6C is a little more generous because it doesn't predetermine an outcome. One solution may be a second works yard, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. That would presumably be quite expensive. They are meant to more or less tackle the same issue, though, which is to facilitate greater efficiency out of public works by examining our infrastructure in that regard in our facilities.
Any comments on those two items? If we are indeed going to put them on a list, the explore alternatives and the public plan for public works. Any comment on either one of those? Councillor Wink?
So I put the explore alternatives forward. Yeah, that kind of ties our hands a little bit. So we can eliminate that. It's similar to what staff is for plan for public works. You know, all I think it's important. So, you know, probably in the 11 to 15 range.
Thank you. Is there a mover or a seconder for that? Councillor Hildebrand, thank you. Discussion on this motion? Not seeing any?
Yep, Councillor Hahn.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Hahn. I don't see you in the dark. Go ahead.
So the explore alternatives for Tice Road, just so I'm clear, is that going to be done by way of consultants, or is that going to be done by way of our own staff? Just so I understand the expense involved with the exploration.
Mr. CAO or the Director of Public Works, perhaps? Which one?
Well, consultant is the appropriate way to go on this item.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Hahn?
So further to that, what kind of dollar figure are we looking at then for a rough ballpark?
Well, we did earlier this year put in for, you council will recall there was a brief flurry of emails pre-COVID. I can't be more specific than that. The government made funding available for like a 2 or 3 week window. At any rate, for efficiency studies, and we put in applications for those grants, and we got one to study the building drainage and IT areas, and we're also been awarded some money on this file. So we have a potential opportunity there.
Thank you. Councillor? Any other comments, Councillor Hahn?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Madam Clerk, call the vote then. Thank you.
This vote starts with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
Carried.
So, Council, when I look down on number 7, I see that creation of public charging stations and electronic vehicle fleet. Shouldn't that could actually go to the green energy vehicles charging?
It can simply be deleted now.
Yeah.
It's already in there.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any other, who's, Councillor Stewart, any preferences on your behalf?
there was one and now I've lost it. It's rolling around. Oh, under the council recommend
Yep.
the mobile app for the trail system. Wasn't it already established that the region has one and that it's pretty efficient?
Yeah, I'll go to Councillor Hildebrand on that, unless this one wanted to be more specific. But Councillor Hildebrand, have you used the regions in relation to Pelham's, and how did you find it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, I've not used it. I know they have an app, but all my cycling friends, they know where they're cycling. So if you know the area, they're all cyclists. So I will take a look at that app and see how efficiently it works. But
Yeah,
the region does have an app, and it also gives you different options. So it looks like a good app.
Yes, I know the region has put a lot of time and money into that whole situation. So I have a feeling that it would be very Pelham friendly also. Thank you.
Right.
Come back to you then, Councillor Stewart.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Olson, I haven't missed a hand on you, have I?
No, I've been quiet here. No, and I appreciate them trying to find me a job, Councillor Hildebrand. So there's somebody else who might have something to say about how much work I get. So I submitted about a few things here, and one of them was probably number one was an annual training standards for employees. And I suggested best practices probably 40 hours a year. And that would include best practice training in safety, health and safety, first of all, meetings and provincial standards and such things like that as that. So it's basically every quarter we have one full day of training.
Okay, let's have the CAO comment on that first. Mr. CAO?
Oh, you muted.
Oh, we missed.
First off, we really appreciate that as an actionable item. Training is often the first thing to go when when you get into choppy financial waters. I can tell you that we're not yet in a position to present you the staff version of the 2021 budgets, but we have made significant cuts, in fact, dramatic, if not 100% cuts to things like travel and hotel stays, but we've left all the monies for training intact. And we've done that because we have accountants who need to maintain their credentials. We have an engineer who needs to maintain engineering credentials, a lawyer who wants to maintain his lawyer credentials, planners, and so it goes. And in fact, the corporation relies on a number of us having our credentials to be able to do the things in our job descriptions. So I say that by way of commentary to this. Prior to COVID, we were doing 2 all-staff meetings a year, and those involved training components. We had one planned for this, it was planned for the end of September, but with the COVID numbers going back up, we canceled it, and there was going to be some mental health training at that. But what I can say is that culturally, this organization has been very good about making sure we do have training. We do have software available to us that provides, that tracks who's taken what, and we maintain logs and records of, for instance, we can prove that I took the WMIS training upon my employment here. So we all log on, you go through the courses, you pass the tests, and then you get the check mark. And so we do, in fact, our corporate training, all because of Brianna Langor's considerable efforts in that regard, is actually pretty robust for a corporation of our size. I think you'll be quite impressed if you sort of saw that extent of it. What I can say, if that need not necessarily be in the strategic as a strategic priority, other than I mean, shameless plug, but we tried to save money on the theory that we can do our training from our desktops. Almost all our professional associations are offering conferences now by video. So we still need those training opportunities, but we think we can substantively avoid much of the travel cost and the hotel cost that used to be part and parcel of that. So that's where we focused cuts, but we've kept money so that we can, each of us who has some sort of professional credentials can maintain those.
Thank you for that. Any comments from the Councillor Olson?
Yes, I think this is an opportunity where we could establish ourselves as the best practice leader. And this is, you take those opportunities, they come along, and it sounds like we're well on the way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Going back to the list, Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Can I just ask? Can I just ask then, annual training standard for employees under that column D, is that going to be moved, or are you satisfied and you're satisfied that it's already occurring and we can take it off? Or I need a motion to move it.
I'm not sure what to say.
Okay, well, we can leave it for now. Did you have something else you wish to bring forward?
Yes, I had something to do with BIA, Business Improvement Associations. I was wondering if we could get a report or a staff report on a BIA for Fenwick, Font Hill, Ridgeville, and North Pelham. And I suspect it's going to be a one BIA just because individually, except for Font Hill perhaps, they're probably too small for their own BIA.
And we'll have a comment from the CAO. I believe the train is headed down that track. Mr. CAO?
We would be most pleased. That item is also on the staff list of suggestions. The Pelham Business Association is still in existence. My information is it has twice failed to muster quorum to motion itself out of existence, but that is the intention of the remaining members. So a BIA is statutorily defined, so that we're clear, the provision for them was created in the Municipal Act, and they're actually sort of like an arm, if you will. They're formal committees of the municipality. We'd be very happy to provide you with the reports, providing some options and some analysis. We ourselves think that this might be a reasonable response in light of the various economic difficulties caused by coronavirus. And so we should at least explore the concept and determine whether they're viable and appropriate for our community or communities, as you prefer. So we're highly supportive of this, of at least producing a report to council and then that giving you the information and the context you need, and also being able to consult with the business communities. A key component of a BIA is that they have to be paid for by the members, and a municipality ends up defining geographically an area, and if you have a business within that, you're paying. So that's the rub. Not all welcome BIAs, many do. And I have no idea if they're right in this community or not, but in light of COVID, I think it's certainly most appropriate that we at least take a look. And to do that, you need a solid staff report, and for us to put, that's a major document. I'm going to require a fair amount of work on our part, so it ought to be an action item for us. And according where you want it prioritized, I think you should discuss amongst yourselves. But the basic concept, we're highly supportive of at least bringing you that report.
Thank you for that, Mr. Thank you for that, Mr. CEO. Just one question, not wanting to get into the weeds at this particular meeting. So when you say that each BIA would need a specific location, so we wouldn't be able to have, according to the Municipal Act, we would need whether a separate one for Fond Hill and for Fenwick, or is there somehow we could be able to amalgamate over the whole town?
Okay, so I am extremely confident that a community improvement plan, which is 5C, can be done for the whole of the municipality if we so choose. I am not confident that one BIA can be used for for all the downtown, but that's why we do the report. I don't want to publicly commit because I need to spend a little time reading in the law on that area.
Yep.
I think that's problematic, but I couldn't testify to that, which is why we should all spend the time on the report and give you something to really sink your teeth into. So those are separate topics, but after you discuss BIA, I would submit you might consider talking about community improvement plans. Ms. Weens can provide you with a wealth of information there, more than I can, but generally speaking, where you have one, you at least consider the other.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. CEO. Any more questions on this?
So I have a motion by Councillor Olson. I'm not sure what timeframe category, and I need a seconder on the motion with regard to BIAs.
Now, do we have a seconder?
So do you have a concept, Councillor Olson, on what time frame or what category you wish that in?
Through you, Your Honor, I suppose since I think there's going to be a tremendous need for economic focus because of COVID, and I would prefer somewhere in the middle, probably 11 to 15, maybe.
Okay, thank you for
Can
that.
we scroll the Excel sheet so we can see what's left to? Thank you. Perfect.
So do I have a seconder to move BIAs into the 11 to 15 category?
So
Councillor
right now
Stewart?
there's no room in the 11 to 15, so we'd have to move something out.
Yes, we can be doing that, but right now, if we put it in this category, at least it has a home, and then we can move something else out and move that up, unless you have a preference, Mr. CAO?
Yeah, well, if I can be so bold, so originally we were looking at these things around prior to getting the other discussion. The capital asset management plan is utterly core to our future as a municipal corporation and as a community. However, as you're aware, we have the job ad out for a temporary staff member to come and help us with that. It is a long journey, and it will not happen overnight. And we've already taken steps on that journey. We've got a lot of work done. There's a lot of water already under the bridge. Unfortunately, we have to keep building the bridge and keep going. And there are 2 more years and maybe 3 more years of July 1st deadlines for us to meet. What I'm saying is there is no universe where that won't be important for us, but you can afford to move that down in priorities because there's also, that's not getting done by July 1st of next year. There's a component of it that has to be done by July 1st of next year, but there's no way we're going to have the full thing done in 2021 and fully populated and be everything we want it to be. So if you move that down, it'll sort of better recognize the time frame, and it'll still take our full attention. We're looking forward to having a new staff member assisting us on that item. So that would free up an 11 to 15 space if you'd move capital asset management down 1 or 2. It will not be dropped. We all get why we need that so critically, but it's just, that is a slow multi-year process. The statute designed it to be a 5-year process, which I think actually accurately reflects the sort of scope of work we're talking about.
So I see Councillor Hahn and Councillor Wink.
So if we're just looking at that category of 11 to 15, that column of 11 to 15, there's the Heritage Advisory Committee, but call me crazy. I'm pretty sure we already agreed to go ahead with this. So I'm just not understanding why it's still on there. Could we not remove that? Because it's at this point, we're moving forward with it. So why is it still on there?
Mr. CAO?
If council is prepared to declare that done, it can come off. We don't have one established. I mean, you have approved terms of reference, and we have the ads. I think they're already out. I thought they were out in this week's paper.
That's
Yeah.
correct,
Now,
Mr.
last week's
CEO.
paper.
That's correct, Mr. CEO.
Certainly, I have every reason to believe that'll be accomplished for about January. It's just that we tend to, it isn't 100% accomplished, and we tend to leave some things that don't require 3 years to get done on the list, so that there's some capacity to satisfy them. That could either be moved down dramatically because it will get done, or come off as council prefers if that's a better alternative than moving capital asset management.
So right now, I do have a motion by Councillors Olson and Stewart to slot the business improvement area into the 1115. If that is approved, then we could look at the Heritage Advisory Committee perhaps to come out. Is there any further discussion on the business improvement area going in the 1115 category? Okay, so I'll call the vote on that, and this vote starts with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Okay, so that carries. And is there a motion to do something with Municipal Advisory, Heritage Advisory Committee? Is that your hand up, Councillor Wink?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to move the capital asset management plan over 2 columns.
Over 2 columns to 26
21
to 30?
to 25.
Sorry, 21 to 25.
Yep.
And is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hildebrand.
Any discussion on that motion? Not seeing any.
Okay, and this vote starts with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Okay.
And then before we go back to council, I'd just like to ask the Director of Planning, the Community Improvement Plan. Is that the SIP program that that the town had about 2 or 3 years ago? I guess the last council disbanded it or eliminated it. Is that the same program, Madam Director?
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes. The Community Improvement Plan was prepared in 2009, and it covers 2 areas in the town, that being the downtown Fonthill and downtown Fenwick. And the previous council did put that program on hold for 2 years.
Okay, thank you. And the funds for that program, some of them are by the region, and then the rest I don't know what the percentages are by the town council in deferral of taxes and what have you. Am I correct in that?
Mr. Mayor, through you, there are a number of programs that we have. I believe there's 5 or 6. The region also has a number of programs, and so some of the ones that we offer, they partner with us on, or they also have matching grants, but it's not all tax rebate. The tax rebate one or deferral is only with respect to new residential units in the community improvement plan areas.
Yes. Okay.
But then we also have grants for things like facade improvements, as does the region. We have a planning application fee grant. That one the region doesn't offer, but we do. We have a commercial business loan. There's never been any take up on that one. The region does not have a similar one. So there's a variety of programs. Some the region does partner with us, and some they don't. The region is undertaking a review of their community improvement plan programs, and it's anticipated that there'll be a number of changes, and they're looking at aligning their programs with their strategic plan.
Okay, great. Thank you for that information. Anyway, we'll go back to council again and to the list.
And just through you, just so that the deputy clerk is aware, so community improvement plan at C4 is the same as what we've just moved in I7. I'm sorry, the BIA. Yeah, so you've removed the BIA. Perfect. That's now in I7 for BIA. Okay, members of council. Councillor Hahn, I see your hand.
So, yeah, I'll take bylaw enforcement policy for 500. So I guess I'm supposed to ask as the question, right? Or else you lose your points or something. That's not how it works. Anyways, H8. So bylaw enforcement policy, I mentioned that one earlier. So if that is pertaining to kind of an all-encompassing bylaw enforcement policy for cannabis, for short-term rental, for a variety of other things, I would suggest that we actually move that into the 1 to 5 category at the bottom there, because we need to tackle the enforcement, the teeth part of the cannabis issues and the short-term rental issue. We've got the bark, but we need some bite. So that I think should be put at the bottom of the 1 to 5. So that would be my motion.
And do we have a second on that motion? Councillor Wink? So, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to call for discussion, I'll watch for the hands.
Yep. Any discussion on this motion? Moving this to our 1 to 5 priority.
Okay, and this vote starts with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Olsen?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that's carried. Members of council, anything to add? Councillor Hahn.
So me again. Okay, I just wanted to mention too, I think that we decided that we can get rid of D6 only because we're going to amalgamate that with the other one, right? The zoning bylaw. I think that's one and the same we decided, or no?
Yes.
I think you also decided D5 wasn't going to make the list either.
Right, because the region's working on that. That's correct.
No, D5 to our deputy clerk. Yeah, we can delete that. So, I'm sorry, did we join community improvement plan with the staff report on BIAs? Did we complete those?
No, we did not.
No.
No.
Okay.
So we probably should, as a council, get a report on CIP. Doesn't mean that it gets approved, but I think we need to have a good understanding on what it is. So I'll make a motion to put that into the 16 to 20 category.
And do we have a second for that? Looking for a second to move community improvement plans into the 16 to 20 category.
Mr. Olson, I believe.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
thank you.
Councillor Olson has his wrong hand up, given where his camera is, but he is trying to vote. There it is. There it is.
There, that works. Okay, so any discussion on this motion to move community improvement plans over to 16 to 20?
I'd like to make a comment that I'm glad to see that Councilor Wink brought this forward. We have several individuals who are going above and beyond when they're working on town buildings. I'm talking about the downtown core, and they definitely would be nice if somehow or other we could help them what they're doing to the town. That they're really sprucing up the downtown, and if we could somehow or other through either regional funds or somehow give these guys a hand, it would be I think it would be much appreciated by the individuals. Thank you, Councilor Wing, for bringing that up.
Councillor Hildebrand has his hand up.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilor Wink. Before I approve or disapprove this program, I'd like to see some kind of report, because in the past, all I've seen is problems occurring with that program.
Any other comments? Councilor Hahn, I believe.
So, Councillor Hildebrand, are you putting that through as an amendment then, that you want to see a report on it, or what are you positioning that as?
Well, I thought that's what Councilor Wink is what.
A report is the action item, like that is what staff will do.
Oh,
when you
okay.
give us instruction, we bring you back a report explaining what it is, what your options are, what the choices and costs are.
Okay, peachy.
Thank you. And Councilor Stewart, I thought I saw your hand up.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question's been answered. It's just a report. It's not something that's going to be implemented.
Right. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. This vote will start with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Councilor Wink. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Councilor Wink?
Okay, so could I have some clarification on the future urban land needs analysis? Just need some insight on that, please.
Probably go to the Director of Planning. Ms. Weens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly this is looking at the, once we know what kind of growth allocation will be provided by the region, then after that, there's analysis as to whether or not that growth can be accommodated in our urban area boundaries, whether or not expansions need to be made to the urban area boundaries to accommodate that growth, or whether we have to look at other types of approaches to accommodating growth. So that's what the urban land needs analysis would do, would be look at those kind of options and measures to accommodate future urban growth. As I indicated, the region is doing their official plan. Part of that is going to be those growth allocations, and those are growth allocations to the year 2051.
Great. Thank you, Madam Planner. Does that answer your questions, Councilor Wink?
Yes, thank you.
And would you have any recommendation where that situation should fit in, or should it just stay as a recommendation right there?
Councillor Wink?
So obviously, we're going to have to deal with this. It's not going to be done immediately until we hear the regional official plan. So yeah, I see the need to put it into this, but I'd probably put it into the 26 to 30 category.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that, or any comment before?
Yeah, we need a seconder first.
Yeah, I'll seconder first then.
Looking for a seconder to move the future urban land needs analysis. Oh, is that
Mr.
Councillor Olson?
Yep. Yeah. Any comment or questions on this motion? Not seeing any.
Okay, and this vote starts with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
It's carried. So under the council recommended initiatives, we still have improved search engine on town website, join with Lincoln St. Catharines Tourism Partnership with a question mark, associate membership in Ontario Federation of Agriculture, report on PSR stats and establishment of time standards for responses. I think we may have addressed that in something further. Sunset clauses on land sales to avoid land banking. Annual training standard for employees we'll come back to. Recognize importance of biodiversity and food security in planning. We have a Parks and Rec review. Monthly staff report updates to include historical data. Comprehensive strategic plan for development in Pelham. Demographics and future of Pelham, planning for the future, and town club policies and agreements. Councillor Olson has his hand up, as does Councillor Hahn.
Councillor Olson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I want to address the tourism partnership that's been created by St. Catharines and Lincoln. And I believe that they're inviting other members into this, and their press release said that it is to promote business and travel for their communities, because so many businesses have suffered through the economic times. And I believe that there's a memorandum of understanding that has been agreed to. And if you read many businesses and attractions have suffered significant economic loss, festivals and events have been canceled, and the movement of people and goods is significantly slowed. And they refer to their communities being picturesque trails, historic architecture, and beaches, which we don't have, world-class live entertainment, and a growing craft, beer, wine, and culinary scene. And I'm proposing that we join in that partnership along with St. Catharines and Lincoln, or at least investigate it. Perhaps that's what I should say.
Is there a seconder on this motion?
Councillor Hahn, I see your hand. I'm not certain which category you'd like to see that in, Councillor Olson.
6 to 10, I believe, because I think it's for coming out of COVID.
Okay, is there any discussion on this motion?
Is Director of Recreation with us tonight?
She is, and Councillor Stewart has a question.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just as to comment, I think it's well worth investigating, because the more we work together, the better it is for all of us.
Thank you. Okay. Director of Recreation, Vicky, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. On that motion with the join Lincoln and St. Catharines for tourism, are we partnered with the Pelham Chamber of Commerce on something like that also, or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not exactly. It's more of a business relationship for the business community.
Okay.
I would encourage a partnership with Lincoln and St. Catharines. It's nothing but good news for grants and so forth. Partnerships are always welcome.
But did we not have an information booth in the MCC that we partnered with Welland Chamber of Commerce? Again, you would classify that strictly for the business, or wasn't that area attractions, or how was that? Or did that never take effect?
Mr. Mayor, yes, we do have information at our reception desk here at the MCC. We do, I mean, this year we haven't had as many
Yes.
visitors to being closed and so forth. But in the past we have, and the Pelham, I always call it Pelham Welland Chamber, but it's really Welland Pelham Chamber. They have supported the information booth by applying for a grant for a student to work the desk as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for that information. Yep. Any other comments on this motion? Not seeing any?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this vote starts with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that carries. And Councillor Hahn has her hand up.
The town club policy and agreements. Just wondering if we can maybe tackle that guy. I'm not sure when, I guess the answer as to what column we put it in would have a direct relation to when existing ones are going to be ending. And if there aren't existing ones, we probably need them sooner than later. So perhaps the CAO could speak to those.
Council, I think you could reasonably put that as high as 6 and as low as 20 in that continuum in there. If you put it in the middle, you have to move something else. But if I am interpreting this correctly, this would address users of various town facilities and various contractual relationships we have with SAME, a number of which expire in the upcoming year. Well into next calendar year, and this would be a fruitful area or potentially fruitful area for staff to devote some time to see if we couldn't find new ways to operate and or achieve some efficiencies. With that in mind, that's what we'd be doing. There are a number of different relationships we have with very different organizations in town, and we don't have a standard. We don't have standard agreements. They don't read the way traditional legal documents do. Not all of them. So there may be some benefit in bringing some consistency and uniformity in our treatment of third parties and our hosting of them. How important that is relative to some of the other items, I can't say, but you certainly, staff are happy to see that on the list and are most certainly inclined to engage in that work.
Actually, further to that then, before I decide to move that one on there, I guess I want to better understand the 6D sunset clause in land sales to avoid land banking. If that can be, I guess, illuminated a little bit as well, so I can understand what the priority that might be, and if so, where it might fit in comparison, considering we only have one area left under the column of 6 to 10.
Maybe if I speak, I understand why the person suggested it, views that as a good idea. I don't actually view that really as an appropriate strategic action item. One, the ship has sailed. In that almost all of our land deals are either closed or approximate to closing, as you're all aware. Secondly, our Pelham has the second highest average land price in Niagara, and we don't really have a problem with land banking. If one wants to buy land and hold it strategically because it's going to appreciate in value, there are 11 other municipalities that make more sense than Pelham. We're simply, Niagara-on-the-Lake and Pelham simply have very high land prices, and our developers are in fact turning over shovels fairly quickly. So I don't know that staff agree with that being on the list. We can certainly, it's not very hard to have that inserted into future agreements if that's the will of council, but there aren't many future agreements coming our way. So
Councillor
it can
Wilson?
certainly be an item to go discussed by council at some point in an enclosed session if we're selling other land.
Councillor Olson has a question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was the one that proposed the idea of a sunset clause on development, and with the CAO's explanation, I would defer to that and remove it if that's what was desired by everybody.
It is a real problem in a lot of the municipal world. Yeah. So it is basically a very good idea. We're just very unusual in that it's not happening in Pelham. In fact, you look at the shops on 20, they've got a lot of movement there. All of our developers are moving really quickly.
So does that clarify it for Councillor Hahn?
Yeah, I understand it better. Yes, thank you.
Okay, and are we ready to remove that then, sunset clauses in land sales to avoid land banking? I'm seeing nods.
That's a question to all of council.
I'm seeing nods. Do we want to make that a motion to remove it, or can we just have agreement that that's being removed?
Just move, take it out.
Okay. So Councillor Hahn, back to you with regard to town club policy and agreements.
I would propose we put it at the very bottom available slot there, which is H8, like Battleship. You guys remember that growing up, Battleship? You sink a ship there? That's what H8.
I do remember.
H8.
And is there a seconder on that? Councillor Stewart. So, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to call for any discussion on that.
Any discussion on the motion?
Seeing none, this vote starts with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
And that carries. Okay.
Any other councillor have a comments on what we should be moving, or should we be moving? Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We still have the Heritage Committee on the list, and I feel we could take that off and make room for another action as that's already underway. It's the advertising has gone out, and it is going to happen.
And I think the rest of council will agree with you on that. We'll, unless anybody has an objection, we'll have the Councillor Wink.
Yeah, so if you recall, we had a couple of items on last year's priority lists that were nearing completion, and just to have a couple of quick hits for staff to say, well, yeah, we accomplished this. Like, if I look at some of the other stuff, there's not a lot of meat in some of these other ones, so I don't mind leaving it on there.
Any other comment by the rest of council? Councillor Hildebrand?
I agree with Councillor Wink to that extent. However, the fact is there are some other easier ones coming up that I think we need to put in sooner than having a Heritage Committee at that location.
Yes. Well, any other comments? Myself, the fact that it's so close to being done, I think we should take it out of there, but that's I agree with Councillor Stewart, but whatever. Anything, Councillor Olson, what's your feeling on that?
Given that it's so close to completion, I think we can remove it.
Okay, Councillor Hahn?
Yeah, I had suggested that earlier tonight, for sure. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, let's then, unless Councillor Wink, you're deathly against us, can we indeed remove it then, please?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So just for the information of council, we'll move that to the completed list.
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Hahn?
Yeah, I'm just looking at D4, the improved search engine on town website. So with that, I'm just going to take a couple guesses here. One, that would involve our communications individual, Mark, as well as perhaps our IT folks as well. So a lot of the things that were on this chart from 1 to 25 have some impact with those departments, but some don't, right? I mean, clearly they just don't. So those, it would seem to me like improving a search engine on town website could be done in conjunction in an overlap time frame with some other things. Yes, there may not be a specific category, like we don't, right now, the only open spots are at the bottom of the 16 category, the 21 category at the very bottom. So by default, I guess that's where it have to go if we're going to move it onto the chart. But my point is that I think this could be worked on irregardless. Am I incorrect in that way of thinking?
If there's enough support around the horseshoe, I wasn't aware that there was a problem with the search engine. All I can say is that this new website's won 2 awards. But if there is a problem with the search engine, and you'd like to spend some time on, that's a great notice of motion at a regular council meeting by whoever's thrown it up there. Presumably there must be an issue or it wouldn't be there. So that's a really good way to handle some of those. That's a relative, I mean, actually, I don't know if that's a small task or not, but that's a good way to get those done if we don't really want it here in the strat as a strategic item, but it's sort of daily work. Someone should bring that as a regular notice of motion at the next council meeting. And assuming there's enough of you who agree with that, we'll go spend some time doing it.
I do see Councillor Wink with his hand up.
So I was the one that put this forward, and really it was out of frustration the other day when I was looking for the noise bylaw. I did find it, but when I put in noise bylaw, I had something like 125 items that came up, and I kind of stopped after item 30 because there was so much other stuff ahead, whereas noise bylaw should be fairly straightforward to provide. And anytime I use that search engine, I get frustrated.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if others are finding the same thing. Thus the reason why I put this forward. Obviously, the people who gave us awards didn't do a search.
So, Councillor Wink, would you are you willing to follow the CAO's advice and put a notice of motion on that at the next council meeting, or would you like to put it on a list?
Do you know what? Put it on the list. You know, and at least let Mike and Mark provide a staff report with respect to that.
Okay, then we need a seconder, Madam Clerk.
I need to know which category, and I need a seconder.
Put it 26 to 30.
And do we have a seconder for the motion? And Councillor Hildebrand. Any comments, questions on the motion? Councillor Hildebrand?
I agree with Councillor Wing. Trying to find bylaws and all those kind of things quickly is not easy on that search engine.
Okay,
So from my perspective, it's not easy to find those bylaws.
okay,
I know
great.
where to find it now.
Yeah. Okay, well, hopefully Mark and Mike can take a look at it and bring a report to council. Thanks for bringing it up, councillors. Any other questions, comments?
Does Mr. McDonald have anything he wishes to add?
Oh, is he with us?
Yes.
Oh, Mr. McDonald, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Through you, I know when we launched our website roughly about this time last year, it did take a little while to purge some of the old pages from that search engine. After about 6 months, many of those things should have been corrected, and what people were searching for should have populated the top. I just searched for noise bylaw as per Councillor Wink's example, and though it doesn't specifically come up as noise bylaw, it does come up in the very first result, which is bylaws and enforcement. And my guess is probably because the noise bylaw is embedded on that page as a PDF, so the search engine isn't recognizing noise bylaw as a separate page. So it's pulling the page that has that information. I can certainly chat with our manager of IT and our website provider to see if there's a way to isolate our searches by document, by page, by calendar, event, so on and so forth. So certainly we can look further into that.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Director of Communications. Any other comments on this? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. This vote will start with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes?
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. So we have three hands. We have Councillor Olson, Councillor Wink, Councillor Hahn. So we'll start with Councillor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's an item on the corner there that looks like an orphan. It's a risk management framework. And I think that might be one of the sleepers on this chart because I'm taking that to be something like a management culture comment. And I think it has an important place in any organization is how the culture of the company or the organization. And I look back at something like Toyota, and they have a thing called the Toyota Production System, which has made them the best company in the world, in my opinion. And I'm just wondering whether that should be something that we raise perhaps to a higher level, because it could mean a lot of things like problem solving and a culture of quality and all kinds of techniques like failure mode analysis and effect, and that type of thing. So I'm just wondering whether that should move up a little bit for a little more study.
Before we move it, perhaps Mr. CAO would want to comment on that item.
The item was quite appropriately near the bottom of the pile because a year and a half ago, we had a number of things literally figuratively on fire. And having an analytical framework wasn't the first thing one does. At this point, we've now made a number of changes that deal with financial risk, legal risk, operational risk. We've increased training, a number of different types of risk, and it's really interesting when you see this group of professionals, how each of us, I approach risk like a lawyer does. It's an insurance / legal paradigm. As we speak, we have the job ad out for the town solicitor. Certainly it's my intention to wait to see whether or not we successfully retain someone. And if we do hire someone, whether he or she has a background in this area, and that would become a component of his or her job helping come up with a framework across the corporation if we hire them and if they have that as background. So that's a very significant variable that would change a lot of my own view of this topic. I'd be quite happy to see it moved up. I fully agree with its, not that my agreement matters, but with it being on the list and something that is worthwhile us spending corporate time on. I don't think there's unless council moves it very far to the left, realistically, I don't think we'll even take a serious look at doing something like that for at least 6 months, and quite possibly more than that. In the sort of 6 to 12 month range is likely where we'd be starting, unless you move it much farther to the left and essentially tell us to make it a greater priority. But left to my own devices, that's in sort of a 16 to 20 thing, which gives us another 6 months before we, so we know whether our team changes, whether they have another member of the team, and that might adjust our corporate approach to how we go about fulfilling that item.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. CAO. Mr. Olson, do you, after hearing the CAO, would you perhaps leave it there, or do you still want to make a motion to move it?
For you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to move it to the 16 to 20, if that's possible.
Okay, we'll see if we have a seconder for that motion. So a seconder, and I see Councillor Wink is going to second it. Is there any further questions, debate, comments on this? Not seeing any. I'll go to the clerk.
Okay, and I think this starts with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That's carried. And did we have Councillor Wink or Councillor Hahn? Councillor Hahn?
Yeah, just thinking aloud here, as I often do. And I'm just thinking, going back to kind of the communication piece, we have Mark on the line as well, so maybe he can suggestions as well. I'm just wondering if we might want to consider as a priority. So we have bylaw enforcement piece, which we've added now to the first category, right, in G8. So that's a priority as we move forward for standard short-term rentals, et cetera, as we've identified already. A lot of those issues are time sensitive in the sense that if people are calling to have enforcement, it's usually because of smell, so that's very timely. Light, which is very timely, or short-term rental because somebody's, obviously violating a bylaw, and that's very timely. Right now, my understanding is they're using the PSR for this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that's the case unless they call in. Because we know that PSR has some issues and we're going to be addressing that in a 6 to 10 category, we've already talked about that. I'm just thinking perhaps we should be thinking about having a user-friendly, for lack of a better word, button on the main page of our web page. So it's very prominent, people can click on it, and it then would be a separate tool, let's call it for lack of a better word, that would allow enforcement to know when those complaints or concerns come in. Other PSR activities like trees that are maybe hanging over, or other things, not to say they're not important or they're not timely, but they're perhaps not as timely as something as light and smell and people moving into a unit that shouldn't be. So I don't think that we should just necessarily be kind of doing this all-encompassing system where everything gets funneled into one. I think things that are more time sensitive, especially with regards to cannabis short-term, that kind of thing, perhaps we would have a consideration or a report or what have you, suggestions from our communication expert to have some sense of urgency and prominency on our webpage, so people can very clearly articulate what the concern is. Boom, they click on it on their main screen and it goes right into a page. Boom, they can, you know, click on a few buttons, put in their name and address, what the concern is, and it goes immediately to the enforcement folks. Just wondering what other folks are thinking about this.
Go ahead, councillors. Anybody have a comment on that? I was wondering before we go ahead, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a great idea, but the only problem with it is if you send something and you need it to be dealt with in a timely fashion, somebody has to be available to receive it and to act on it.
So that's a great point, because my next ask at the council meeting, and I've already put this in as a notice to motion, is in fact assistance from different levels of government. Yes, this is not going to come the very next day. We know this, but you got to make the ask. And part of that ask is assistance financially, but also through enforcement. So that's why I'm just trying to look at that calendar and that time sensitive information, and just preparing ourselves for, hopefully, when there is support coming our way, that we'll at least have a plan in place to address it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I can't help but wonder if I shouldn't either go to communications or PW. Got any comments on that?
Possibly Chief Limburner,
Fire Chief?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I guess bylaw should kind of speak to this.
Yes. I keep forgetting, without having everybody in the room, I forget who's all out there. My apologies to that.
Thanks, Mayor. It's I appreciate it. It's makes me feel welcome. But anyways, as far as complaints go, bylaw complaints, and it deals into public works also, but we have walk-in complaints, we have phone complaints, we have mail-in complaints. PSR is only probably one of 4 or 5 ways that you can file a complaint. And then also through your counselor, because we get quite a few of those, that someone contacts council and then council contacts us. So I don't think we dropped the ball in any one area as far as complaints. PSR is a really good system. It could be probably enhanced a little bit, but there are quite a few ways that we handle complaints.
I know that from personal experience, Chief, that you never shut your phone off, and I know I've abused that knowledge either on a Saturday or Sunday morning, and you're always on the phone. Maybe you didn't want that public.
No, I don't mind that being, and most people know in this town that my phone never shuts off, but bylaw operates 7 days a week, and we have a direct line complaint cell phone that the officers carry on the off hours. So we're always available.
Great.
We might not respond immediately because speaking of risk management, we take a report or a complaint and we'll do a quick risk analysis. And if it's not important, or if it's not safety related, we might wait till Monday or Tuesday or whatever morning to reply to it. But overall, bylaw is available 7 days a week.
Great, thank you for that. Any comment from any of the councillors on that? Okay, Madam Clerk, where are we?
Very good question, Mr. Mayor. So I did have, I'm not certain if Councillor Hahn was putting forth any specific motion, but certainly Mr. McDonald is on the call, so he did hear your thought process in that regard. Is there any specific motion coming from members of council on any of the items remaining in council recommended initiatives, or items that are on the schedule that need to be moved around? And noting that we will need a curfew resolution in about 10 minutes.
If I could comment on the Councillor Hildebrand. So, Councillor Olson, I'm guessing that you brought forward the associate membership in Ontario Federation of Agriculture. Is that you that brought that forward, sir?
I did. I
Yeah.
did.
And I would just like to comment on it that I think that with the importance of agriculture in our town, I really appreciate that. And I think that it would be a symbolic recognition of this council to the business of agriculture if and perhaps the CAO again would advise you to bring forth a motion as opposed to leave it here. Go ahead, Councillor Olson. What are your comments on your initiative?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My view is that association memberships can have a lot of impact on policy from all levels of government. And I think this would be an associate membership and perhaps not a full voting membership, but certainly allow us to stay fully abreast of developments in the agricultural community. And I'm thinking of things like migrant worker housing, and developments are sure to follow the COVID, because there's some people are not being treated well, and that's not the case here. But in other communities, and the rules are going to have to change. So I'd like to be able to be if it was the wish of council, I would certainly want to be a delegate to the OFA if we were accept this. Okay. So that's about it, sir.
Thank you. Comment from any other councillors on this initiative?
Mayor, if I could chime in, it's Fire Chief.
Yep.
The OFA meets regularly, and we do attend when invited, but they're always open for visitors. So if we wanted to send a councillor there on a regular basis to be involved, they would be open arms. I can give you the contact for that person, but they meet, they were meeting once a month, but I think they're kind of spread out now because of COVID.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Olson, did you wish to have a more formal membership than that, or what's your thinking on that?
Well, that might be appropriate. To attend as a visitor or guest. I would like to receive all the correspondence as well. So maybe the associate membership would be the thing to look for.
Yes. Well, perhaps if you if the fire chief can get you into the next meeting, you can talk to the president of the Niagara OFA fellow.
I'll take care of that through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take care of that. Councillor Orson, I'll send you all the contacts. I think Joyce is pretty easily contacted. So,
is that suit? Thank you. Does that suit your initiative then, Councillor?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Looking what's on the list left. Anyone have a comment? Councillor Hildebrand.
Yeah, I have 4 items on the list, and all basically 3 of them can be done through notice of motion, but I want to talk about it, and 1 is for information. The one for information has to do with demographics and the future of Pelham. And I think this is important for us to realize. In 2017, our average age was 50.6. 57% of the people were 50 and above, and 10% were 16 and below. In our area, the Ward 3 that I live in right now, the people that have moved in within the last month have all been basically seniors. And so I think that demographic is just pushing forward. And once we get the final ages, I think that's going to significantly change what we do and one of the things we do. And that brings me to my item with regards to parks and recreation. One of the things that at AMO that was talked about was using stormwater management plans, open them up, for recreation areas. When I did a survey up at Lookout subdivision, that's the only one that has gates on there. And the residents were very happy to use that as their dog park. And not only that, as walking through one area to the other area to get to the malls and all the stuff along Highway 20. So I don't know whether there's a reason why, but I'd like to bring up a notice of motion to eliminate fences around holding ponds, because I think that is an area that the residents could mow better than being mowed now. And these people with dogs in the area, and there seems to be a lot of seniors walking dogs, can just walk their dogs around it. From a planning perspective, it obviously has to be looked at, but that's just one of my comments. The
Thank
next
you.
notice of motion would be a staff report. To me, what I'm getting staff reports on a quarterly basis, but for instance, when I look at the power usage at the MCC, we've got it graphed. We know from day one to day whatever what the usage is. Yes, we get data every 15 minutes, and we look at that every week. But what we do is we plot the monthly curve, and we know whether we're going forward or backward. One of the things that I'd like to look at, for instance, would be in the planning report. We get a number of building permits, but what it doesn't give for me is the development fees, the projected development fees, and the collected development fees. If that stuff is all reported, it's so easy for me as a counselor to take a look at it and determine, how we're doing against basically monitoring performance. And I think that concludes what I was going to talk about. So I think they're all notice of motion, but maybe the CAO has a different view on those, and they should be presented differently.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. You definitely hit about 3 different categories there, but we'll see if the CAO has a comment.
2 of them, if I may. With respect to stormwater ponds, I actually think that's an excellent action item. And I think that's an excellent action item because it's actually quite complex and it requires work from planning and from public works at a minimum and rec. I think all 3 need to be involved. So you're talking about significant staff time and resources, and that's exactly the sort of thing that we shouldn't do unless you tell us to. So I'd very much welcome you moving that in there. I can tell you that Mr. Marr in particular, we have been taking some sort of, I'll describe it as low grade, and I don't mean that dismissive of the work product. I just mean not intense look at this because it is something that's been sort of bandied around a bit. And we would very much welcome you telling us to bring you back a report on stormwater ponds and the town's philosophy of same. It could guide future development applications. It could deal with specifically the one you referenced that has the fence around it. There are some physical reasons for that, but also many things in life can be fixed and changed. So that's a good use of that. Conversely, we're happy to just take it under advisement. We do quarterly reports. And I'm happy for us to start including some historical data for better comparators for you. That's relatively easily done. But that was one of about 3 months after I started, I made 2 changes. We went from monthly reporting to quarterly. And we also started including links to the strategic plan in all of our reports. So that forced all staff, up to including myself, to think every single time we're working on something about how it connected to the strategic plan. And if it didn't, maybe we shouldn't be working on it. So that was one change. And the other was going to quarterly reporting. And I've only understood council to be happy with that. Monthly reporting on our stats offers almost no value and was killing us. It's a huge time suck that could be spent productively. And I happen to believe that's part of the reason we've been so successful over the last year is we've gone to quarterly. So I don't know if that's just a typo or if that was actually meant that way, but I would strongly resist monthly reporting. I'd be happy to include historical data so that they illustrate more things to you. And we would welcome some instruction around a future report on stormwater ponds. Would be a wonderful instruction and directive, and please give it to us.
Okay, thank you. And I see we're going to have to do that. I was wondering if the Director of Planning, as far as the demographics and future of Pelham, planning for the future, does the region, well, I know for a fact the region carries out a lot of planning in that. Do you, does the region do enough in-depth of each municipality, or do you think there would be value of, and I don't know how we would do it, of doing our own study? Could you have any comments on that, Director of Planner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, certainly there has been a number of demographic studies done, and the region does that as part of their growth management. Certainly the trend in the province of Ontario is that Ontario is aging. And in terms of the municipalities here in Niagara, we certainly are seeing that trend here across the region, but most dramatically in Niagara-on-the-Lake and in Pelham. We have a higher proportionate rate of seniors than other municipalities. So that being said, there's a number of reasons for that, but a lot of the that is driven by the market, and again, the ability for affordability and for young families to move into the market. And it's part of the conundrum where we, our market, our value of land is very high. That drives up the price of housing, and so it seems that the only people that can afford to live here are people that are moving in. They are retirees that are asset rich, and so they can afford to come here. There, like I said, there are a number of factors that drive this. We certainly, from a planning perspective, and try to approve developments that provide for a variety of housing options and choices, so that we can have a mix of demographic to support our schools, to support our businesses, and to support our recreation programming and other community activities that we have in the town. So it's it's not a very, it's a very complex question to look at, and in terms of the number of initiatives and factors that we can do to address it. But certainly the analysis from the demographics, there have been quite a bit of studies done that by the region with respect to that. And again, that'll be information that you'll be receiving coming forward as the region moves forward with their regional plan.
Okay, thank you. And before you go any further, the clerk has to have a motion.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, on a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand, that the rules of procedure as contained in the Town of Pelham procedural bylaw be suspended, that the specified meeting curfew time of 9 p.m. be and is hereby waived, and that the remainder of the business listed on the agenda for this meeting continue to be considered until all matters have been concluded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question, starting with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
Carried, thank you.
So Councillor Hildebrand, we will, did you have satisfied with the answers, or do you want to, what's your, how do you want to do these initiatives? Notices of motions, or how do you want to do this?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, the CEO and I had already previously agreed. They're quarterly staff reports, so that's fine. I'd like like them also to be graphed if possible, so I don't need a motion on that. With regards to park and recreation, the CAO advised that we should have a staff study with regards to fences around the stormwater pond, and I'm willing to make that recommendation and put it in the 11 to 15 category.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Do we have a seconder?
Is there a seconder on that recommendation? I see Councillor Olson. Any discussion on this? Not seeing any. Turn to the clerk.
Thank you. And this vote will start with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That's carried.
Okay, council, we see, what, 2 left, I guess? Maybe 3, I guess. Anyway, who wants to discuss the remaining issues? Which is the monthly staff report, is that it? No?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we did have some discussion on the annual training standard for employees. I'm not certain if Councillor Olson was satisfied with the responses or if he wishes that moved on to the strategic plan. We also have recognizing the importance of biodiversity and food security in through planning matters. Updates to include historical data. I believe that the CAO has indicated this will be on the quarterly reports where applicable.
Yes.
So that could probably come off of this list.
Yep. So Councillor Olson, back to the top one. Were you happy? Were you satisfied with the CAO's answer on that, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm satisfied. I just think that this is an opportunity, a low-cost opportunity to be a best practices model for in so many ways by having a training standard.
Okay, Mr. CAO, your comment on that?
Council, we work for you. If you wish us to bring back a report to establish a formal standard, please to do so. I just, the part I wanted to communicate to you is that as a practical matter, this corporation does invest pretty heavily in training. We do have a fairly robust program, and I'm not sure that it specifically needs more enhancement, nor particularly an increased investment from where we're already at.
Okay.
Nevertheless, if you wish it, we shall do so.
Perhaps, perhaps, Councillor, a staff report in what is being done or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be sufficient for me.
Okay. Any comments from any other councillors? Okay, so Madam Clerk, will that be a notice of motion or at the next meeting, or is just a direction for staff to do a report on training?
I see the CAO is, I don't see his face, but I believe he is aware of the request, and so we can take that as staff direction if there's no opposition from council.
Not seeing any?
Seeing none?
Okay. Yep.
I'll put that in as staff direction, Mr. CAO.
Certainly, pleased to do so.
Okay, and then the next one on the top, planning stuff. Recognize the importance of diversity, biodiversity, and food security. Wayne, that sounds, or Councillor Olson, that sounds like yours.
Yes, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't remember what I was thinking about there, actually.
Yeah, you may have been hungry.
Yeah, that's probably what it was.
Can we take it off?
I think under the circumstances, Your Honor, yes.
Okay, thank you. Unless any other councillor wants to make a comment on it. I don't see it. Okay. Thank you, councillor. And comprehensive strategic plan for development in Pelham. That we have comments on that. Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've had quite a discussion with regard to zoning bylaw and all that. But the question I always raise in my mind is, how can I as a councillor properly make a planning decision when we do not review the technical part from the planning act, which defines monthly growth and intensification plan? That's the dilemma I always put myself in when I don't have the data to back up what the decision is going to be. So that's just a comment. You can eliminate that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this initiative? And if we, unless someone wants to move it to a column, we will, like the Councillor Hildebrand said, we've discussed this particular item pretty well tonight. So unless someone wants to move it to a specific column, we'll leave it die a death. And that comes back to the demographics and future of Pelham, planning for the future. I believe, Councillor Hildebrand, that was yours. What do you want to do with this initiative?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It was just to indicate to the rest of the council and to the staff where the people are that are moving in around me. Talking to the local lawyer, he said all the legal deals he has done for the land sales have been all asset-rich people from Ancaster and heading towards the Toronto borders. You know, those are the people that are moving in, and the housing for the young people, the market is almost demanding a price that I'm not sure how these people will ever afford the land because of the price of the lot. We learned in the last meeting that the lot at the old arena was worth $350,000. And I know that the person in my development just 2 years ago built the last home. The fees for building that home before they put a shovel in the ground were $40,000. So you have $400,000 between a lot and a building before you even get something on the ground. That's just the facts of life in Pelham. Thank you.
No. Okay, thank you. So we'll just, other than commenting on the initiative, we'll leave it there then, Councillor?
You can stroke it off.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments by any other councillors on this initiative? Not seeing any, I'll turn to the clerk.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that does exhaust all of the staff recommended initiatives and council recommended initiatives. So I do have a motion by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that council adopt the prioritization of the tasks as discussed at the September 28th special meeting of council. So if the deputy clerk could perhaps hide columns C and D, members of council will now see the prioritization of the strategic planning initiatives in columns 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20, 21 to 25, and 26 to 30. And we could entertain if there are any other suggestions. Sorry, Mr. CAO.
I think before council does the penultimate vote to accept as presented, you probably ought to move one of the 26 to 30s into 21 to 25 so we don't have a logic hole. That urban land needs analysis is fundamentally important. It would actually scratch a lot of the itches Councillor Hildebrand raised tonight. It's extremely useful, and although I know why we're not going to start it tomorrow, that may be of some benefit, or the East Fenwick secondary plan, because I do think we need to move forward with a plan.
Councillor Wink?
So I'll make a motion to move the future urban land needs analysis to the 21 to 25 column. And then move the last item up just one spot.
So Councillor Olson, you were the seconder initially on the future urban land needs. Is that suitable to you to move that over to 21 to 25?
Yes, it is.
And are there any objections by members of council? Okay, so seeing none. Are there any other changes that council wishes to contemplate? Councillor Hahn.
Yes, just looking at the bottom of column 11, so delegation of authority bylaw. I thought we already passed that, because did we not have to have that in place for when COVID came, and we had to have that in place should something happen to not put us in a quorum position? I thought we had that already in place. Am I incorrect? Does this still need more work?
Well, they actually use the exact same titles. It's so that's misleading and probably our fault. The bylaw you passed only took in effect, was in a delegation of authority in the specific event that so many of you became incapacitated that you could no longer form a quorum, in which case your power, excuse me, would have been delegated to my office so that we could have someone responsible still making decisions. So that remains on the books until such time as the COVID is no longer a pandemic. Now, the actual delegation of authority bylaw that's speaking about is something that we've started working on as a senior leadership team, albeit in a low intensity way. And that is meant to be a discussion we'd like to have with council. My goal would be December or January coming up, so like 4 months away, 3 months away. And the nature of that is to really clarify what council's roles and responsibilities are, what staff role and responsibility is, and then what's the shared lane, we each have some to do. This is something that most councils, most large municipalities have this as a policy or as a bylaw specifically, and it does a very good job of role clarification. And we've never really had that in-depth discussion. I can tell you from just being at the senior leadership table, we often have these moments where we pause and we say, can we do that? Should we do that? Is that them, us, both? And often trying to figure out where the authority lies. So we mean to have that wholesome discussion, and then we mean to bring you draft product, and then you can say yay or nay on any number of things. They're specific delegations to specific positions in the corporation, if they are all or some of them acceptable unto you. But that's the conversation we mean to have. We think it will help operational efficiency significantly. For instance, 4 weeks ago, council delegated 2 pieces of planning authority to the director of planning that were really minor technical things, dealing with townhouses after they're built and the splitting of the land, for instance, that really didn't need to clutter up a council agenda when there's only ever going to be one right, reasonable answer. So that's what that is. It's a report that we haven't written yet based on some ideas that we've only semi-flushed out, but is a common municipal item and enormously helps everyone understand, we should be working on that. That's just fine. Or no, you want that coming to council.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on the board as it stands? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
So, Madam Deputy Clerk, would you like to stop sharing the screen and put the members of council back then? So I do have a motion by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that council adopt the prioritization of the tasks as discussed at the September 28th, 2020 special meeting of council. And this vote would start with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. And under the alignment of the 2021 strategic priorities, be it resolved that council adopts the alignment of strategic tasks with the 6 established strategic priorities. Mr. CAO, I think that's still a little bit of work that we need to continue.
Well, it is, but it's late and that's not really controversial. So may I suggest that we take as direction that we ought to assign, I mean, the environmental ones are self-evident for instance. It's a classification that has no strength at law, but perhaps we could bring this back to you. We will be bringing this back to you at a regular council meeting, and staff will do that equation exercise. And if you're happy with it, of course, you just move to accept it. And if you disagree with any of it, by your motion, you can fix it. I think it's the least significant. It's the most self-evident part of the evening. So I really think you've just done yeoman's work.
So if we just add that as directed to the Chief Administrative Officer for future report.
SLT will do it tomorrow, sitting around a table, and ultimately approval rests with you, council, at any rate. So I can't imagine we would come to a different conclusion than you would.
So if there are any questions on that motion, I'll start the vote then with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that carries. And on a motion by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand, be it resolved that the Chief Administrative Officer be and is hereby authorized to undertake directions provided during this meeting of September 28th, 2020. There were a few directions. And is there any comment or questions? So the vote will begin with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. We're coming to the close now on a motion by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and duly passed, being bylaw 4283/2020, to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Pelham at a special meeting held on the 28th day of September. Starting with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Members of Council, on a motion by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Hahn, be it resolved that this special meeting of Council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for October the 5th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
For sure. Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion is carried.
Meeting is adjourned.
Presidential debate and Monday Night Football. Two great choices.
And a
Be
hockey
well,
game.
everyone.
And a hockey game on.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
And good night, Madam Clerk and Deputy Madam Clerk. And I sign that.